The sleek diplomatic vessel glided into Veshti's orbital dock, its hull reflecting the amber light of the alien world's twin suns. Inside, Ambassador Jiwoo Park stood before the viewport, watching the unfamiliar landscape come into view. After 20 years of border skirmishes and tense standoffs with the Veshtians, she was about to make history. Nervous? Asked Taehyun Kim, her chief aide, joining her at the window. Jiwoo smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her formal diplomatic uniform. Not nervous, cautious, there's a difference. The ship shuddered slightly as docking clamps engaged. Through the viewport they could see the welcoming party, a group of tall, ridge-backed Veshtians in elaborate ceremonial armor that glinted under the docking bay lights. Remember, Jiwoo said to her team as they gathered by the airlock, they value directness but consider smiling a challenge. Keep your expressions neutral and maintain eye contact for exactly 3 seconds. No more, no less. The human delegation consisted of 12 people. Jiwoo, Taehyun, 2 cultural specialists, 3 trade negotiators, a military liaison, and 4 security personnel who looked uncomfortable in formal wear instead of combat gear. They'd spent months preparing for this moment. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss revealing the Veshtian greeting party. Leading them was Sub-Commander Telox, his chest plates more ornate than those of his companions, indicating his high rank. The human diplomatic envoy is received by the Veshtian hierarchy, he announced in carefully practiced English. You stand upon Veshtian soil and are granted temporary guest right under our ancient laws. Jiwoo bowed precisely 30 degrees, deep enough to show respect but not subservience. The United Earth government extends its gratitude for your hospitality and looks forward to productive discussions. As the delegation followed their Veshtian escorts through towering corridors of polished stone and metal, Jiwoo noted how the local citizens stopped to stare. Some showed curiosity, others unmistakable hostility. Humans had never before been permitted on the Veshtian homeworld. They're recording everything, Taehyun whispered, nodding subtly toward small, hovering devices trailing their procession. Good, Jiwoo replied quietly. Let them see we came in peace. The diplomatic compound stood apart from the main city, a structure specifically built for these negotiations. Its architecture represented an awkward blend of Veshtian angles and what they imagined would be comfortable for humans. The result was oddly charming in its imperfection. That evening, after being shown to their quarters, the team gathered in Jiwoo's room for a briefing. First impressions? She asked, sitting cross-legged on a cushion that was clearly designed by someone who had only seen humans in pictures. Sun-hee Yoon, their cultural specialist, spoke first. The greeting ceremony followed traditional protocols, but did you notice the military presence? 3 times what their diplomatic guidelines specified. Jiwoo nodded. I counted 4 high-ranking military officers in the reception area. Only 1 was listed in the official welcome party. The city seemed tense, added Hyunwoo Kang, their security chief. Streets too empty for midday. I think they cleared civilians from our route. They're afraid of us, Jiwoo concluded, which is both good and bad. Fear can lead to respect, but also to preemptive action. She turned to Taehyun. Any updates from Earth Command? He checked his secure tablet. Satellite deployment complete. We have emergency extraction coverage if needed. The Pacific Fleet has moved into standby position near the jump point, but remains out of Veshtian sensor range as agreed. Jiwoo looked around at her team. Handpicked for this mission, the best Earth had to offer. Tomorrow we make history. The first substantive peace talks between humans and Veshtians. They expect us to be either weak or duplicitous. We'll be neither. The following morning, as they entered the grand negotiation chamber, Jiwoo felt eyes tracking her every movement. The room was circular with a raised central platform surrounded by tiered seating. Veshtian observers filled most seats, their ridge-backed forms creating a sea of sharp edges and muted colors. Lid negotiator Varex, an elder Veshtian with pale green scales and ceremonial scars indicating his diplomatic rank, greeted Jiwoo at the chamber's center. Ambassador Park, he said, his translator device giving his words a metallic quality. I admit, many among my kind doubted this day would come. The difficult paths are often the most necessary ones, Jiwoo replied. For 3 days, the negotiations progressed with surprising smoothness. Jiwoo's team addressed border demarcation issues, trade possibilities, and cultural exchange protocols. The Veshtians, initially rigid, began showing small signs of flexibility. On the evening of the 3rd day, Taehyun found Jiwoo reviewing notes in her quarters. "Something's happening," he said without preamble. "There's unusual movement among the military escorts. They've doubled the guards at all exits, and 3 shuttles arrived an hour ago with what looked like special operations units." Jiwoo set down her tablet. "Have you noticed how War Chief Ravex keeps attending the sessions? He hasn't spoken once, just watches from the highest tier." "His faction opposed these talks from the beginning," Taehyun reminded her. "Intelligence suggests he has considerable influence with the traditionalist segments of their military." Jiwoo stood and walked to the window overlooking the compound's central courtyard. Veshtian guards patrolled in formations that seemed more defensive than ceremonial. "We're making too much progress," she said softly. "That threatens certain interests." "Should we request an extraction?" Taehyun asked. Jiwoo watched a group of junior Veshtian diplomats crossing the courtyard, their animated discussion visible, even from this distance. Young idealists not so different from their human counterparts. "No," she decided. "Tomorrow I present our comprehensive peace proposal. If we leave now, another opportunity might not come for decades." She turned to face her aide. "But alert the team, full security protocols. And Taehyun, if anything happens to me, make sure the data core reaches Earth. Everything we've learned here could be the difference between war and peace." As darkness fell over the alien landscape, Ambassador Jiwoo Park made final revisions to her historic proposal. Unaware that in chambers deep within the Veshtian military complex, War Chief Ravex was gathering his conspirators for a plan that would change the course of both civilizations forever. Morning light streamed through the high windows of the negotiation chamber, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor. Ambassador Jiwoo Park stood at the center of the room, her voice steady as she presented the final section of humanity's peace proposal. The chamber was fuller than previous days. Additional Veshtian officials had arrived, claiming to observe this historic moment. "In conclusion," Jiwoo said, her hands moving gracefully to illustrate key points, "we propose a demilitarized zone along the Proxima border, jointly administered by both species. This would allow civilian research outposts from both sides while preventing military escalation." The Veshtian delegates murmured among themselves. Lead negotiator Varix tilted his head. A gesture Jiwoo had learned indicated careful consideration. "Your proposal shows unexpected wisdom," Varix acknowledged. "The High Council will need to—" A sharp sound cut through the air, like metal striking stone. Jiwoo turned toward the noise, her diplomatic instincts sensing the shift in atmosphere, even before her mind processed what was happening. At the upper entrance to the chamber, a group of Veshtians in military armor pushed past the guards. Their scales were painted with red markings that Jiwoo recognized from intelligence briefings, the insignia of the traditionalist faction. Taehyun was already moving toward her, his hand reaching inside his jacket. "Ambassador, we need to—" The first shot hit Taehyun in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second struck Jiwoo in the chest. She looked down in confusion at the spreading, darkened area on her formal uniform, then back up at the chamber erupting into chaos. "Humanity has been judged and found wanting," announced a powerful voice. War Chief Ravex stepped forward, his ceremonial armor gleaming as he descended the steps toward the central platform. "The weak do not make peace with the strong. The strong dictate terms to the weak." Do-Hyun Lee, the junior communications attaché, had been standing near the back wall when the attack began. When the shooting started, his training kicked in. As diplomats and officials scattered, he dropped to the floor and crawled toward a maintenance access panel he'd noticed during yesterday's security sweep. Blood pounded in his ears as he worked the panel loose with trembling fingers. Behind him, he heard more weapons fire, screams in both human and Veshtian voices. The panel came free, and he squeezed into the narrow service tunnel beyond, pulling the cover closed behind him. In the darkness, he activated his subdermal emergency beacon, a last resort signal that would alert Earth's monitoring satellites. Then he pulled out his communication device and switched it to passive recording mode. If he couldn't escape, at least there would be evidence. Through small ventilation gaps in the tunnel wall, Do-hyun could see portions of the chamber floor. Ambassador Park lay motionless, surrounded by the bodies of her team. Tae-hyun had nearly reached her before being cut down. Security Chief Hyun-woo had managed to draw his concealed weapon, but was overwhelmed by multiple attackers. "Record this moment," War Chief Ravex commanded, his translator making his voice boom throughout the chamber. "Today marks the beginning of the true path for our people." "This was not authorized," Lead Negotiator Varex shouted, his ridged spines flaring in distress. The High Council has been indecisive for too long," Ravex interrupted. "While you talked, the humans expanded. While you negotiated, they prepared. Their deception ends today." Do-hyun's breath caught as he saw something unexpected. Not all the Vestians supported what was happening. Several diplomats were being restrained by Ravex's soldiers. Others had taken protective positions around wounded humans. A younger Vestian negotiator was trying to provide aid to one of the cultural specialists. "Transmit the images to all colonial outposts," Ravex ordered his communications officer. "Let the humans see the price of attempted manipulation. Let them understand that the Vestian hierarchy will never bow to inferior species." Do-hyun realized with horror that this wasn't just an assassination. It was a calculated first strike in a war. The attackers wanted the footage broadcast, wanted humanity to see their ambassador murdered during peace talks. He heard a scratching sound nearby and froze. A maintenance worker? Security? The narrow tunnel offered nowhere to hide. He clutched, his recorder tighter, wondering if he'd be joining his colleagues in death. A panel slid open a few meters ahead, and a Vestian face appeared, smaller and with lighter coloring than the warriors. The Vestian's inner eyelids blinked rapidly in what Do-hyun recognized as distress. "Human," the Vestian whispered, the translator at its throat barely audible. "I am Telex, junior aide to Negotiator Varex. What is happening is wrong. Many of us did not know." Do-hyun remained silent, unsure if this was a trap. "More soldiers come," Telex continued urgently. "The diplomatic compound is sealed, but I know paths beneath the city. If you wish to live, follow now." With few options, Do-hyun nodded and began crawling toward the Vestian. As he moved, he heard War Chief Ravex addressing the chamber again. "The humans have hidden their true strength, their true numbers. Their ambassador spoke of trade while their ships gathered at our borders. But we have seen through their deceptions. Today's action is not merely justice, it is survival." Do-hyun paused, looking back through the vent. Ravex now stood over Ambassador Park's body, addressing what appeared to be a recording device held by one of his soldiers. "People of Earth, witness the consequence of dishonesty. Your kind believed us naive, believed our technological advantage, made us complacent. You were wrong. For every human outpost we have discovered, we will answer as we have today. There will be no negotiation, no surrender, only acknowledgement of your proper place in the order of species." The junior attaché felt cold fear mixed with anger as he realized the scope of Ravex's plan. This wasn't a faction acting alone. This was a coordinated effort to trigger full-scale war. And based on the expressions of some Vestian officials, watching from the sidelines, not everyone opposed it. "We must move quickly," Telex urged. "The compound will be purged of all witnesses within the hour." As Do-hyun followed the Vestian deeper into the maintenance tunnels, his mind raced. The data in his recorder might be the only thing that could prevent immediate retaliation and all-out war. Somehow, he had to get it back to Earth. Behind them, the sounds of systematic execution echoed through the ventilation system. War Chief Ravex eliminating anyone, Vestian or human, who might tell a different story than the one he planned to broadcast across the galaxy. The emergency broadcast cut through all programming across Earth and her colonies. Billions watched in horror as Ambassador Jiwoo Park crumpled to the ground, her final words of peace lost in the chaos of gunfire and screams. The footage, deliberately transmitted by War Chief Ravex, played on repeat across news networks, holographic displays, and personal devices. In her apartment in New Seoul, Ji-hye Park watched her sister die for the 17th time. Her hand trembled around her cup of cold tea as military officials and government representatives filled her living room, their voices a distant buzz. She barely registered the gentle hand on her shoulder. Ji-hye, Admiral Min-ju Park said softly, his naval uniform crisp despite having been awake for 36 hours straight. They need an answer. She looked up at her brother, seeing the same grief and rage in his eyes that churned in her stomach. What are they planning to do? That depends on what you tell them about Jiwoo's final directive. As next of kin to Ambassador, Park Ji-hye held the access codes to her sister's contingency protocols, measures Jiwoo had put in place in case the worst happened. The government representatives waited silently, knowing that the ambassador had entrusted her civilian sister with this responsibility specifically to ensure that the response would not be purely military. Ji-hye stood, smoothed her dress, and faced the room. My sister believed in peace until her last breath, but she wasn't naive. She picked up the secure tablet they had brought her. Activate Contingency Protocol Eclipse. Across the Sol system, hidden preparations that had been years in the making quietly began. In the United Earth Government Emergency Chamber in Geneva, President Hana Cho faced the assembled Security Council. The massive circular room hummed with tension as military commanders and civilian leaders argued over the appropriate response. The Veshtian High Council has sent an official communication disavowing War Chief Ravex's actions, announced Secretary of Diplomatic Affairs Youngsun Lee. They claim he acted without authorization. Convenient, General Jinwoo Kang spat, after broadcasting the assassination to every corner of human space. The 15 colony governors are demanding immediate military action, added another voice. Public opinion is 92% in favor of retaliation. President Cho raised her hand, and the room fell silent. At 63, she had led humanity through First Contact and the tense decades that followed. Now her worst fears had materialized. What we do next will define our species for centuries to come, she said, her voice steady. Admiral Park, your assessment? Admiral Min-ju Park stepped forward, activating the central holographic display. The Veshtian military expects us to be predictable. They've reinforced positions along our shared borders and placed their fleet in defensive formations around key outposts. The display showed red markers clustering at strategic points. They're waiting for us to attack exactly where they expect us to. And your recommendation? Asked the president. Operation Silent Justice, he replied, entering a command that changed the display entirely. New ship formations appeared, vessels and capabilities that many in the room had never seen. While our public fleet maintained visible positions, we've been developing stealth technology and ships the Veshtians know nothing about. We can bypass their defenses entirely. General Kang leaned forward. You're suggesting we strike directly at their homeworld? I'm suggesting something they'll never expect, Admiral Park corrected. Precision extraction of Veshtian moderates and targeted revelation of the truth. The footage they broadcast didn't show everything. Our intelligence suggests significant Veshtian opposition to Ravex's actions. You have evidence of this? President Cho asked. We received a partial transmission from Attaché Do-hyun Lee, the Admiral confirmed. He's alive and being hidden by Veshtian sympathizers. If we can extract him and other witnesses, you're risking our one opportunity for decisive action, General Kang argued. No, countered the Admiral. I'm proposing we show them what humanity truly is, not what Ravex claims we are. 3 days after the assassination, as grief hardened into resolve across human territories, a young engineer named Yoonji Cho worked frantically in the bowels of the stealth vessel UES Shadow. The ship was like nothing humanity had publicly acknowledged, a quantum displacement drive allowing it to appear virtually anywhere in space, surrounded by a molecular disruption field that rendered it nearly undetectable. Final calibrations. Complete, she reported, sliding out from under the navigation console. But I still don't understand why we're not arming the primary systems. Captain Hyunshik Ryu offered his hand to help her up. At 35, he was one of the youngest captains in the newly revealed Black Fleet, but his eyes held the experience of someone much older. This mission isn't about destroying targets, he explained. It's about saving people. After what they did to Ambassador Park. I knew Jiwoo Park. The captain interrupted gently. Trained with her brother. She would be the first to say that starting a war is easy. Preventing one when all signs point to its inevitability. That's the real challenge. Throughout the ship, 75 crew members prepared for humanity's most audacious operation. Unlike the public ships with their visible weapons and strength, the Shadow carried a different kind of payload. Extraction teams, truth broadcasting equipment, and technology designed to temporarily disable rather than destroy. All sections. Report ready, Captain, announced First Officer Suman Yoon from her station. Captain Ryu took his seat in the command chair. Navigation. Set coordinates for the Vestian homeworld. Displacement drive to activate on my mark. As the countdown began, he opened a shipwide channel. Crew of the Shadow, what we do today will either prevent a galactic war or ensure we fight it on our terms. Ambassador Park believed the Vestians weren't our natural enemies, that certain factions manipulated both sides toward conflict. Today we'll put that theory to the test. The ship vanished from Earth orbit without a flash or sound, leaving no trace of its passage. On Veshti, Do-Yun Lee huddled in an underground chamber with 8 Vestian dissidents. For days they had moved through forgotten tunnels and ancient catacombs beneath the capital city. His uniform was torn, his face gaunt from stress and minimal nutrition. The orbital defense grid has been fully activated, reported Telex, returning from a scouting mission to the surface. War Chief Ravex has declared martial authority across 3 sectors. Has there been any human response? Do-Yun asked. None yet, replied another Vestian named Merix. But Ravex continues to broadcast inflammatory messages, claiming that human warships are amassing. Do-Hyun checked his recorder again. The evidence it contained could change everything if only he could get it to Earth. With his emergency beacon activated, he could only hope that someone was listening. They will come, he said with quiet certainty. The question is how. War Chief Ravik stood before the massive tactical display in Veshti's Central Military Command, his ridge spines extended in anticipation. Around him, senior officers monitored defense grids and weapon systems. 7 days had passed since the assassination, and the expected human counterattack had not materialized. Status of the border outposts, he demanded. Fully reinforced, War Chief, reported his second-in-command. Our fleet is positioned at all likely entry points. Ground defenses are at maximum readiness. Ravix made a clicking sound of satisfaction. And the humans? Their public channels are filled with outrage. Their military vessels have taken up positions near jump points but have not advanced. The officer hesitated. Some in the High Council are suggesting that perhaps the humans are more cautious than we anticipated. They are gathering their courage. Ravex dismissed. When they attack, they will follow predictable strategies. Their military doctrine has always been transparent. Overwhelming force applied to our border installations. A younger officer approached, nervously. War Chief, there is unusual communication activity in the civilian sectors. Some citizens are questioning the official account of the ambassador's death. Ravex turned slowly. Increase information control measures. Anyone spreading dissent will be detained for questioning. As he issued the order, none of the Vestian officers noticed the momentary flicker on their sensor displays, a ghost signal that appeared and vanished in less than a second. Aboard the UES Shadow, Captain Hyunshik Ryu felt the familiar disorientation as the quantum displacement drive completed its jump. The view screen showed the night side of the Vestian homeworld, its curved surface glittering with lights from cities and orbital installations. Displacement successful, reported the navigation. Officer. We are inside their defensive perimeter, holding position in their sensor blind spot. Ryu nodded. The ship had materialized in a location the Vestians considered impossible to reach, directly above their capital city, yet completely undetected by their vaunted orbital defense grid. Status of sister ships? He asked. The Whisper and Phantom. Confirmed successful insertion at secondary targets. All vessels running silent. First Officer Suman activated the mission timer on the main display, synchronizing operation in 3 minutes. Extraction teams standing by. Throughout the ship, specially trained personnel made final preparations. Unlike standard military units, these teams contained linguistic experts, cultural specialists, and infiltration technicians alongside combat operatives. Remember, Ryu addressed them through his comm, this is not an invasion. Primary objective is extraction of friendlies and deployment of truth measures. Lethal force authorized only when absolutely necessary to preserve team integrity or protect civilians. As the teams moved to the deployment bays, Chief Engineer Yunji checked the status of the most crucial system on the ship, the Truthcast network. Unlike conventional weapons, this technology could penetrate Vestian communication systems without triggering defensive measures. Truthcast primed and ready, she confirmed. Ambassador Park's final address and the unedited chamber footage are packaged for broadcast. Captain Ryu took a deep breath. Deploy teams. Commence Operation Silent Justice. In the underground chamber beneath the Vestian capital, Do-hyun Lee jerked awake as his emergency beacon vibrated against his skin. The pattern was unmistakable, a human response signal. Something's happening, he whispered to Telex, who kept watch while the others rested. The young Vestian tilted his head. I feel vibrations from the surface. Not explosions, but movement. Do-hyun checked his recorder one last time. The device contained not just the assassination footage, but hours of subsequent conversations among the Vestian dissidents, proof that many opposed Ravex's actions and feared what would follow. How far are we from the emergency extraction coordinates, he asked. 3 tunnel sections, Telex replied, but the upper access points are heavily guarded now. Do-hyun stood wincing at his stiff muscles. Wake the others. We need to move. Now. Across the Vestian capital, small teams of human operatives emerged from what appeared to be ordinary atmospheric disturbances, micro-displacement fields allowing precise insertion without detection. Rather than targeting military installations, they moved toward civilian centers, communication hubs, and, most importantly, the hidden locations where Vestian moderates were reportedly being detained. Lieutenant Jun Kim led her 5-person team through the quiet streets, their adaptive camouflage making them nearly invisible in the pre-dawn light. Their target, a detention facility housing members of the diplomatic corps who had opposed Ravex's coup. Security pattern as expected, whispered Sergeant Dong-hyun, scanning the building. Minimal guards. They never expected anyone to reach this deep into their territory. June nodded. Deploy sonic disruptors. Non-lethal takedown only. Within minutes, the guards slumped unconscious, and the team breached the facility. Inside, they found 23 Vestians in holding cells, diplomats, cultural officers, and even 2 military officials who had refused to support Ravex. Lead negotiator Varix, wounded but alive, stared in disbelief as his cell door opened. Humans. Here, impossible. Nothing's impossible, June replied, offering a universal translator. Ambassador Park believed you were an honest broker for peace. Was she right? The elderly Vestian straightened his posture. Many of us fought against Ravex's plan. He claims to protect our species, but he drives us toward extinction through war. Then come with us, June said, extending her hand. It's time to show your people the truth. In Veshti's military command center, alarms suddenly blared as communication systems throughout the planet began broadcasting unauthorized content. On every screen, the unedited footage from the negotiation chamber played, showing not just the assassination, but the Vestian opposition to it, the executions of dissenters, and Ravex's true words about triggering a war. Shut it down. Ravex roared as his own voice echoed through the chamber. revealing his plans to his stunned officers. "We cannot," a technician responded in panic. "The signal is everywhere, broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." "Impossible," Ravex hissed. "Their technology isn't—" He froze as a new image replaced the assassination footage. Ambassador Jiwoo Park appeared on every screen, a recording made before her death. "People of Veshti," she said calmly, "if you are seeing this message, then I have fallen victim to those who fear peace more than war. But my death should not be used to drive our peoples further apart. Humanity does not seek your destruction. We seek a future where both our species can thrive among the stars." As the message played, reports flooded in from across the planet. Detention centers opened, political prisoners freed, and strange human vessels appearing and disappearing at will, completely bypassing the defense systems Ravex had claimed were impenetrable. "War Chief," his second-in-command said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from members of the High Council. They're convening an emergency session to vote on your removal." Ravex stared at the tactical display, watching as decades of careful planning unraveled in hours. The humans hadn't attacked as expected. They hadn't given him the war he needed. Instead, they had done something far more devastating. They had shown his people the truth. Outside the command center, citizens gathered in growing numbers, their angry voices rising as they demanded answers from their leaders. The revolution had begun. Not with weapons, but with knowledge. The central military fortress loomed against the amber sky of Veshti, its ancient stone walls reinforced with modern defenses. Inside, War Chief Ravex and his most loyal officers had barricaded themselves after 3 days of civil unrest across the planet. Outside, an unlikely alliance had formed. Veshtian security forces who had defected to the High Council stood alongside humans in advanced battle armor. Admiral Minju Park stepped from his command shuttle, the wind ruffling his formal uniform. Unlike the stealth teams that had infiltrated the planet days earlier, he arrived openly, his ship broadcasting identification on all frequencies. Beside him walked lead negotiator Varex, recently freed from detention. "Are you certain this is wise, Admiral?" asked Captain Hunchik, eyeing the fortress. "Ravex still controls significant firepower. My sister believed that how we end conflicts matters more than how we win them," Minju replied. "Today we honor that belief." A young communications officer approached. "Sir, we've established a direct channel to Ravex. He's demanding to speak with you alone." Minju nodded and accepted the secure communicator. The small holographic projection showed Ravex, his ridge spines fully extended in aggression. "Have you come to gloat, human?" the Veshtian snarled. "To dance upon the ruins of my authority?" "I've come to offer terms," Minju replied evenly. Ravex made a harsh clicking sound. "Terms? You have ships that can appear inside our defenses. Weapons we cannot counter. Why not simply destroy us and be done with it?" "Because that's what you would do," Minju said, "and we are not you." The Admiral outlined the conditions. Ravex and his conspirators would surrender to face trial before a joint tribunal of Veshtians and humans. Their crimes would be judged according to the laws of both species. No summary executions, no revenge killings. Ravex's inner eyelids flickered in surprise. "You expect me to believe humans want justice rather than vengeance? After what happened to your ambassador?" "My sister," Minju corrected quietly. "Ambassador Park was my sister." The Veshtian fell silent, studying the human's face. "You have 1 hour to surrender," Minju continued. "After that, we will take you by force, still alive, still to face trial. But the path there will be considerably less pleasant." As the communication ended, Varex approached the Admiral. "He will not surrender peacefully. Ravex believes death in battle is preferable to the shame of defeat." "Then we'll have to show him a third option," Minju replied. Inside the fortress, Ravex gathered his remaining officers. Once 100 strong, his inner circle had dwindled to barely 30. "The humans mock us with their mercy," he growled. "They believe us weak enough to value our lives over our pride." A younger officer named Kyvex stepped forward hesitantly. War Chief, perhaps we should consider their terms, the evidence they've broadcast. Many of our people now believe our actions were dishonorable. Honor? Ravek spat. I acted to preserve our species. Humans are expanding too quickly, consuming resources, establishing colonies on worlds that should be ours. Their technology advances too rapidly. In 50 years, they would surpass us. In 100, they would dominate us. But their ships, another officer argued. They could have destroyed us at any time. Instead, they targeted only military communications, freed political prisoners, and broadcast truth. These are not the actions of conquerors. Ravix turned away, staring at the tactical display showing human and Vestian forces surrounding the fortress. Prepare our final defense. We will die as warriors, not prisoners. On a secure deck of the UES Shadow, Do-Hyun Lee watched the standoff through the ship's sensors. After being extracted from the tunnels beneath the capital, he had spent days debriefing intelligence officers about everything he had witnessed. Now cleaned and rested but still bearing the psychological scars of his ordeal, he stood beside Chief Engineer Yoonji as she monitored a unique device. Will it work? He asked. In theory, she replied, adjusting settings. The quantum resonator can disrupt energy weapons and power systems without harming organic tissue, but we've never deployed it at this scale. Do-Hyun looked at the countdown timer. 43 minutes remained before the Admiral's deadline expired. He needs to see it, Do-Hyun said suddenly. See what? Ravex needs to see that we're not what he claims. Words won't convince him. Actions might. Do-Hyun hurried through the corridors of the advanced ship, eventually finding Admiral Park reviewing tactical options with his staff. Sir, he interrupted, I have a suggestion. 20 minutes later, a small unarmed shuttle approached the fortress. Defense turrets tracked its movement, but held fire as it broadcast a continuous stand-down signal. When it landed in the central courtyard, only two figures emerged, Do-Hyun Lee and Telex, the young Vestian who had helped him escape. War Chief Ravex watched from a balcony, surrounded by guards with weapons aimed at the visitors. I am attaché. Do-Hyun Lee, he called up. Survivor of the peace delegation. I request audience with War Chief Ravex under the ancient right of witness. Ravex hesitated. The right of witness was an old Vestian tradition, one that even military commanders were bound to respect. To deny it would lose him what little honor remained in the eyes of his followers. Approach, he commanded. In the austere meeting chamber, Do-Hyun faced the architect of the massacre that had killed his colleagues and friends. Beside him, Telex stood nervously, aware that many considered him a traitor to his kind. You have invoked witness, Ravex said formally. Speak. Do-Hyun placed his recorder on the table between them. I was there. I saw everything. Not just the assassination, but what came after. How you executed those who opposed you, even your own kind. I eliminated weakness, Ravex replied without remorse. No. You eliminated wisdom. Do-Hyun activated the recorder, not to show the assassination again, but the hours that followed. Vestian diplomats arguing against war. Military officers refusing orders to execute prisoners. Civilians protesting when they learned fragments of truth. Your people weren't unified behind you. They were terrorized into submission. And now humans come to liberate them? Ravex scoffed. To play saviors? We came to end a lie, Do-Hyun said simply. Ambassador Park believed your species and ours could coexist. She died for that belief. I nearly died preserving evidence of it. He gestured to Telex. He risked everything to help me, knowing his own people would execute him if discovered. These are not the actions of natural enemies. Ravex leaned forward. What do you want from me, human? Nothing. I only came to show you something. Do-Hyun touched his communicator. Now, throughout the fortress, weapons suddenly powered down. Defense systems went offline. Even personal sidearms became useless hunks of metal. We could have done this at any time, Do-Hyun explained. We could have left you defenseless from the start. Instead, Admiral Park chose to offer honorable terms. Ravex's inner eyelids blinked rapidly as he processed the implications. The humans, They could disable our planetary defenses? Some of them, Do-hyun acknowledged. Not permanently. Just long enough to show you that if we wanted war, we could have started with overwhelming advantage. For the first time since the standoff began, uncertainty showed in Ravex's posture. You have 15 minutes to decide, Do-hyun said, standing to leave. Face trial with dignity, or be captured without honor. Either way, the truth will be known. 2 weeks later, a solemn gathering took place in the newly established neutral ground, a circular plaza built hastily between the Vestian High Council chamber and the temporary human diplomatic headquarters. At its center stood a simple monument, a crystalline pillar containing soil from both Earth and Vesti, with Ambassador Jiwoo Park's name inscribed in both languages. Do-hyun Lee, now bearing the title of acting ambassador, stood beside Telex as representatives from both species approached the monument. Admiral Minju laid his sister's diplomatic medallion at its base. Lead negotiator Varex placed a traditional Vestian memory stone beside it. In the background, under heavy guard, War Chief, Ravex and his remaining conspirators watched. Their trial would begin the following day, broadcast openly to both civilizations in an unprecedented act of transparency. Is this victory? Telex asked quietly, as the ceremony continued. Do-hyun considered the question. He thought of his colleagues, who had died, of the nightmares that still haunted him, of the decades of mistrust that would take generations to fully heal. It's something rarer, he finally answered. A beginning. As if to emphasize his words, the twin suns of Veshti broke through the clouds, illuminating the monument and casting long shadows behind the gathered diplomats and leaders. Shadows that stretched toward the horizon, but no longer in opposition.